Hi, this is Evelyn Lopez. Welcome to Sustainability in Your Ear, the Earth911.com podcast for the week of February 4th, 2019. We are recording at the very romantic Moonyard Recording Studio in Tacoma, Washington.
A Valentine's Day treasure.
Oh, it so is. And speaking of Valentine's Day, it is almost upon us. So, along with chocolate hearts and roses, we'd like to talk about some of our favorite sustainable things. In other words, we love this not. So, welcome participants. Mitch Ratcliffe, our Earth911 publisher. Mitch, where are you today?
Oh, I'm working from home.
Working from in Lakewood?
Keeping warm. It's cooler than I would like, but not as cold as some places.
Very true. And Earth911 writers Sarah Lozanova and Trey Granger. Sarah, where are you today?
I am in snowy Mid-Coast, Maine.
Oh, I think you mentioned, too, it's a snow day from school, so you've got all kinds of activities going on.
Yeah, there's a snowman being created right now as we speak.
Oh, I think that's... And are you going to do a hot chocolate break?
Oh, there you go. I was actually making split pea soup.
That's probably good, too. And Trey, where are you today?
I am in sunny Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, that sounds pretty good, too. All right. Well, before we get into our stories about what we love and what we love not, let's talk a little bit about the interviews that are up on the website. Mitch, you've got something new going on with interviews. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, we decided to start reaching out to some of the other blogs that do green material, recycling and sustainable living, whom we admire, and interview the founders. As Earth911 has always had a slogan, more ideas, less waste. We wanted to get more ideas and share them with our readers so that they can stop by and check out these sites. And so the first two interviews we've done, one was with Greg Seaman, who is the founder of EarthEasy.com. It's a site with a combination of sustainable and off-the-grid living content in a store full of island-tested sustainable products. So they live off the coast of Washington State in the archipelago of Puget Sound, and have been there for 30 years, built their own cabin from recovered wood out of buildings being torn down in Victoria, British Columbia. And in 2000, when his children started high school and they had to move off island for a while, Greg decided to start the website to share what he had learned. And there's dozens and dozens of great stories. Particularly, we'll be talking later about raised beds. There's a fantastic guide to doing a raised bed on Earth Easy. And then the other interview that we have up is with Michaela Preston, who is with she is mindfulmama.com. And Mindful Mama is another site that's about 12 years old. And again, it started out of Michaela's interest in raising her family in a sustainable way. So she has been looking for ways to cook, to keep the home clean, to tend to one's personal hygiene without being negatively impactful on the earth. And we had a great conversation about how she has raised her kids and what she's learned doing it. And so on Mindful Mama, you'll find great how-to articles. We've pointed to more than a few of them over the last year. And again, she has a kind of a Mindful Mama tested product store. And it's a great place to go and shop for things that somebody who really cares has vetted for their sustainability. And so check them out. They're both interesting people and have good stories to tell. And conversations took about 20 minutes. You'll learn a lot.
Oh, that sounds really great. Sounds like really good websites, too.
Yeah.
Well, so in the spirit of Valentine's everywhere, what do we love? What do we love not? Let's talk about reduce, reuse, recycling. What are the things that you guys think are great?
Well, one of the things that is great today is the fact that we are starting to respond to the Chinese ban on recycled materials. There are real changes going on, and more than that, discussions about real changes that I think will be impactful in the future within the U.S. recycling industry. And in fact, one of the things that we're going to be doing at the upcoming ISRI conference, the Institute for Scrap Recycling Industries, does an annual industry convention, and this year it'll be in Los Angeles is we are going to be leading, Earth911 is putting together panels on alternative ways to deal with the ocean plastics pollution problem and to reinvent recycling in municipal and local or regional settings. So we're looking forward to hosting those conversations and are recruiting participants right now to expand the minds of the recycling industry. So I'm actually confident about the future of the recycling curbside programs in the United States, but they are going to need to change.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about you, Sarah? What do you think is a great thing about anything related to reducing, reusing, and recycling?
I think Valentine's Day is a great time to think about DIY gifts and things like that to reuse or repurpose materials and to give gifts kind of like what we were talking about around the holiday season, like give gifts that can be consumed or experiences instead of things like balloons, which you can't recycle and use finite resources.
I agree.
Like my kids made some wonderful Valentines one year where we made our own paper out of recycled paper and blended it up and put it through a strainer and made these nice heart-shaped Valentines.
And that's the kind of Valentine that I think you would keep forever, too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it really comes from the heart.
Yeah.
I know my mother still has something like that I made when I was in 3rd grade.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Trey, what about you? What do you think is great about?
So one thing that I'm excited about that's actually relatively recent, I'm not sure if you guys heard at the end of January, a new company just launched called Loop, L-O-O-P.
Yep.
Basically, what they're doing is trying to create a reusable packaging service. They partner with companies like Pepsi and Nestle, where you can have products sent to your house and they'll come pick up the packaging after it's empty. So they reuse it. So instead of even worrying about trying to recycle in the first place, just reuse that packaging. Right now it's launching only in a few areas of the US, but hopefully they will get it throughout the United States by the end of the year.
Yeah, Trey, I think that's a really interesting startup. One of the most intriguing that I've seen in a while because of the idea that they are literally taking the whole question of whether it's recyclable out of our responsibility and saying, we'll take care of it. Mm-hmm. In Europe, they have producer responsibility laws that require for several different categories of products that companies take it back at the end. But to see it happening with consumer goods like this in the United States is very encouraging. I think the real challenge is going to be how do they scale up because those boxes and all the deliveries that go with it will be another source of carbon load from the deliveries as well as more waste potentially as more boxes are delivered in order to respond to people's impulse buying habits. The problem with Amazon is that you end up getting 3 or 4 boxes. Why don't they put it all in one? Because we don't order it at one time.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing that we have to start thinking about logistically when we look at these great new experiments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read a couple of articles on Loop, and it sounds very, very intriguing. And I had 2 people email it to me, too. So something about the premise of, and their standard is sort of like the old-fashioned milk home delivery services, where you really don't have to think too much about it because it's at your doorstep. There's something about that concept that I think is very appealing.
Yeah, I think people got it right away, and I did. I got 3 different emails, 2 or 3 different emails from people saying, check this out.
Mm-hmm. Well, kind of until we get to the Loop arena, and I guess I would also say about Loop, to me, it is targeted at your, I won't say necessarily urban dwellers, but probably people who are already pretty good about recycling and want to be even better. So it's a certain segment of the population that is their target market. But we have an article on the website about precycling and how that helps shoppers save. And I think that is also a really helpful concept because anyone, anywhere in the country, any consumer can do the precycling and think very critically about if I buy this product, what do I do with the container after I'm done with it? Should I buy a tube? Should I buy a bottle? And I think that is also a really helpful dynamic to have.
Yeah, I think the precycling approach is a great way to think about what the waste burden you're taking on is. But it's also a great way to stop buying everything on impulse, like we were talking about a moment ago. More planning and a little less just consuming for consuming's sake would be awfully good for the world.
It's tricky because it requires a cultural shift. You know what I mean? Like right now, it's encouraged by stores and by manufacturers to impulse buy. Yep. So it would take consumers to be able to sort of stop that knee-jerk reaction and say, do I really need this? Is this recyclable? Is this sustainable? You know, will it really benefit my quality of life?
Yeah, and those a retail store, grocery store is designed to cater to impulse buying. In fact, 40 to 45% of all purchases made are unplanned purchases when people go to the store. So it really will require us to stop sort of indulging and instead thinking about the consequences of our indulgence.
I wonder if there's a different way to get at that, because there's something satisfying in shopping. There's something that is pleasing to you, I think, psychologically in shopping. And I don't know if that's, hearkening back many, many years to hunting and gathering, but you'd have to maybe ask a psychologist or ask someone who does that type of work of, is there a way you could substitute, or is there some way we could set this up so that buying the right item at the right time would be as satisfying as the impulse find?
So, that part of that is a function of how we developed industrial retail. The idea that you go down to the store and shop, and then in the last 25 to 50 years, we have gone shopping as a hobby. But, what you're describing is an environment in which people are being satisfied by consumption, but they could also be satisfied by being served, curation of these products. And so in this sense, the loop approach makes a compelling counter argument to just go downtown and buy what feels good.
Yeah.
And so I think that this idea of being served with the curated products that take care of the planet is one of the things that is a potential alternative to the impulse-driven shopping that we do today.
I think another good point that was mentioned in the article, which if you haven't read it, posted in the middle of January on Earth911, is Taylor mentioned that don't just think about precycling with your grocery store purchases, think about it for your large items as well. I think people, when they think of a landfill, they think it's full of plastic bags and bottles and the type of packaging you get at grocery stores. A lot of it is this large stuff like tires and toilets and appliances and electronics. That's the kind of stuff we need to make sure we're keeping out of landfills that's potentially toxic. I mean, let's keep everything out, but if you're buying a new mattress, figure out how you're going to get rid of the old one first. If you're buying a new computer, figure out where you can recycle that stuff, because there's a lot of great stuff. You can't necessarily do it in curbside, but just keep in mind when you're buying new products, you got to recycle the old ones.
Yeah, and there was another article that was that Taylor also did this last month. One of our writers, Taylor Ratcliffe, he may be related to me. It was about DeWalt's recycling of power tool batteries. And DeWalt and the industry association they're working with have brought Stanley and Black & Decker into their, I guess it's one company, Stanley Black & Decker, into this as well, so that you're thinking about the whole life cycle of hand tools and their batteries when you're buying them. And starting, I think, within the next couple of years, we'll not necessarily be buying these things, but subscribing to them. You'll get the hand tool when you need it. And instead of being on your shelf, being unused 99.9% of the time, you might use it for a week or two and then have it taken back to some local facility that distributes them. But whenever you get it, it'll be working. It'll have a new battery. It'll do what was billed, and it will overall probably be cheaper than going out and buying the tool in the first place.
Yeah, I think those were both really good articles. So what do you hate? Or should I say, what do you not love in the sort of recycling, reuse world? I can start. I'll tell you. So this is a really minor, tiny thing. But I really hate paper labels on plastic bags. I can recycle my plastic bags curbside in Tacoma. If I gather them all and put them in one plastic bag and tie it up, I can put that in my curbside recycling, or I can take it to the recycling center. But if it has a label on it, I need to cut the label off. And I just find that so annoying.
It's interesting. I purchased an avocado brand pillow, which is a green pillow. They do carbon offsets. They do all the right things to make that pillow as least impactful on the world as they can. But I noticed that the wrapper that it came in the box had a paper sticker on it, just like you're describing. Mm-hmm. So in order for me to recycle it, even though it's recycled materials, recycled plastic, and recyclable plastic, I still have to go in and tear that paper tag off because it's got sticky stuff on it. Yeah. And so we don't fully think it through. Even the best companies can improve this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
My big pet peeve is people who put their recycling, curbside recycling in plastic bags before putting it in their cart. I have friends and family who will do this because they don't know any better and they think it's convenient to just have a bag in their recycling bin to make everything collect and not get as much sugar or substance mm-hmm. on the bin. But if you put that plastic bag in your cart, chances are pretty good it's just going to go right in the landfill.
Oh. Yeah, I've wondered about that. I've seen people with giant trash bags full of recycling in their recycling barrels, and I've always thought, I don't think that works. Very interesting. Sarah, how about you? What are some not love things for you?
One of my pet peeves is when I need to drive somewhere to drop something off for recycling, make an extra trip. Like I like it when stores or other places have recycling options for harder to recycle things, and I can be going about my day and be efficient, and drop something off. But I always wonder if it's sustainable or if it's helping the environment to actually drive to recycle things.
Yeah, you're right. You sort of do that calculation of, have I now sort of thwarted my effort?
Exactly. Did I just cancel it all out?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's why the evolution of the economy, which will be built on logistics and greater insight into how things move, is one of the best hopes we have for making the economy sustainable.
Yeah. Well, what about, here's our second category, changing your personal carbon footprint. What do you love in this arena?
I'll start. I think that the rising availability and falling cost of solar panels in the home is just a spectacularly good thing. And we're seeing a lot of adoption. Everybody that I talk to who is a homeowner or is in a position to think about how to get different sources of electricity is looking into it. Mm-hmm. So it's a great time for us to be working toward making that even more affordable, particularly for the least wealthy of us.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Mitch. I've actually been working in the solar industry for about 12 years, and solar PV, solar electricity has fallen in price so much during that time. Like I installed a 1.8 kilowatt system on my home in Chicago back about 11 years ago. And for the same price, I was able to install a 5 kilowatt system on my house several years ago. So you can get a system that's maybe 3 times the capacity, for the same price just a decade later.
It's like Moore's law in computing. The cost of everything falls by, the performance increases by 100% or more, and the cost falls by half every 18 months. And we're seeing that scale come into solar now in a way that we're not used to seeing in the things that are not active computing devices around us.
The big thing that I love is the growth of electric cars. I think one of the things that was lost in all the conversation last year about that GM plant closure is the fact that companies like GM and Ford, they're closing down because they're investing in electric cars, and they're going to start building, and they need to have the manufacturing and the infrastructure to produce those. I think Americans are starting to recognize that we got to get off of fossil fuels, and that transportation component of electric cars or the hybrid vehicles and for me, living in Arizona, these self-driving cars, they're tremendous. When you guys get them in your city, I definitely encourage you to use those for your ride sharing. They drive the speed limit. They automatically know the best route and will modify their route based on traffic needs. They're really green. So I definitely think they're great.
Have you been in one?
I have. I got to test drive one because Google was actually in Chandler, which is the next town over from me. Yeah. Google was doing all the pilot programs. So I got to test one before they even were out on the road yet.
So what was it like? I mean, that is fascinating to me. This is like, the Disneyland of the future.
It's basically, there's a giant camera, like a rotating camera on top of the car and then sensors throughout. And you get in and there's a computer there and you just type in where you want to go and it will navigate everything. And I was amazed in the sense that they basically said to me, because I was doing a pilot, I mean, I've ridden in them as a ride sharing, but in the pilot program, they were trying to gauge my reaction. Like, are you nervous? Every time you sense any sort of issue, let us know. And one time I said, hey, I don't know why the car jerked there. And they were like, oh, there was a pedestrian in the road. And I didn't even see it. So it's like the car is seeing stuff that I, as the driver, would not even see, which is very impressive to me.
Yeah. So did you drive it in traffic?
Yeah.
Huh. Did it seem, I have to assume it seemed a little bit strange to be at the sort of, I'll say this the bad way, at the mercy of the driverless car, but gosh, the convenience would be amazing.
The big thing that I debate whether it's going to get widespread acceptance is it drives the speed limit. And so many people are in a hurry to get to work that they want to drive 10 miles an hour over.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can, because it won't drive faster. You have to switch to the manual drive mode and drive yourself if you want to drive over the speed limit. So we as Americans got to get used to, spend more time in our commute to make sure we're driving safely.
You know, the other thing that's happening, though, and this is a curious reaction, is people are attacking the cars. And they perceive them as a threat either to jobs or to their safety.
Like physically attacking them?
Physically attacking them, in some cases shooting at them.
Really?
Yeah. So there's a very, like we were talking about before, there's a cultural change that has to happen here for this to be widely accepted.
Oh,
absolutely.
We are a strange people sometimes. Well, I think my big one was also solar, but also I think, Sarah, you did an article on new electric cars last year, and it was a real eye-opener that some of the Chevy cars are really getting a lot of miles to their battery charge, so that, my hesitation has always been, I don't want to have to charge up just after, making sort of one trip if I am commuting. But the capacity of the batteries changing and the prices dropping, I think, is going to really revolutionize, the electric car market as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The Chevy Bolt now has a range of about 236 miles.
Yeah,
so it's really come a long way.
That's great. So what do you not love? Mitch, let's start with you. Within carbon footprint world, what is something that is sort of a peeve or you think is not particularly working?
Well, the thing that I'm wrestling with is this whole question of whether we need nuclear in this environment. And there are clean forms of nuclear fusion that are coming. Bill Gates has been out recently talking about a continuous wave reactor that still produces a lot of waste. But if we could get to a point where we're using fusion, which does not basically produces helium and water as a waste, that would be an interesting augmentation to what is already an increasingly green environment. But right now, the argument ends up being about whether we should be investing in one or the other. And this happens across a whole lot of different sustainability issues, like whether we should capture carbon from the environment or use land management. And it isn't a zero-sum game. It's how do we put these things together in various ways that make sense. At this point, nuclear doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but we shouldn't shut the door if we can do it in ways that could be clean.
Mm-hmm. So that raises sort of another interesting psychological question. I had noticed on, I think it was a Facebook comment, it was about Washington State is looking into a statewide bag ban and plastic straw ban. ban. And somebody had commented on there of, plastic straw use is really just minuscule compared to the real problem, which is, something else about widespread plastic use. And we do have this thing of don't do that thing, do this thing instead, when they're not at all incompatible. When you could easily say, well, let's do both things or let's try both things. So I would say, I don't know that that's a pet peeve that fits in this category, but that's something that I do see a lot of and find very frustrating is the, don't do this, do that, instead of, here's another thing you could try.
Well, and remember what you said about psychologists a little while. That's the struggle that we're in the midst of right now is changing the way we think about things. And none of this is set in stone. It's simply a matter of where we happen to be in history in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think the whole idea of bans is tricky in general. I mean, you've seen this a lot with cities that ban plastic bags versus tax plastic bags. And it's just a whole different dynamic for the consumers who live in those areas, because to me, a ban, you're taking consumer ability to make choices out of play. It would be much easier to say, restaurants, you now have to ask them if you want a straw. And I think a lot of people wouldn't make that ask because they don't even think about it, but we'll stop passing them out unless you request it, instead of just saying, hey, you can't give these out anymore. Some people might have needs, like I have soft teeth and I can't drink ice or whatever, or have ice touch my teeth. So I would definitely approach more the tax instead of the ban idea.
Yeah, I think, and again, that's an interesting policy question. I think in Washington State, and this is just purely my opinion, I think we tend to go a little heavy-handed on the making rules about you may not do this, rather than allowing some market incentives to play out of, if you give people a choice, or if you don't provide them with a straw unless they ask for them, have you pretty much solved the problem that way and you don't need to ban them. I think we have a tendency to want to make these rules that are a little more black and white. But I agree with you. I think that it might be wiser to try first to see if people will voluntarily make some changes.
Well, and that dialogue about what those changes are and the value of the changes, such as I have somebody who it needs a straw because they are disabled.
Absolutely.
That's an accommodation that we need to make. But on the other hand, we could also do it with a paper straw. So it isn't necessarily ban straws. Right. A lot of this conversation sometimes. It could be replace the straws with something better. Or it could be, let's use the right thing for the right task, and just think about it that way. But make sure that it's the sustainable choice, or the most sustainable choice.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, what about you? What do you sort of not love in this category?
I'm really disappointed that we haven't made more advancements with packaging, because it doesn't seem like much has really changed. Like, it's still really hard to know what plastics are recyclable, and it's kind of, I don't like having to just thoroughly decipher things in the store to try to make a reasonably responsible purchase. But I wish there were more sustainable packaging options, especially in the grocery store. I just got back from the grocery store, and I find myself often not buying hummus or things like that seem to have kind of an excessive amount of plastic packaging.
Yeah. That's, Trader Joe, I love Trader Joe, but the packaging at Trader Joe is always plastic. It's their salads, some of them are very good, but they come in so much plastic, I won't buy them.
Yeah, very true.
My disappointment with the personal carbon footprint is I still feel there's a stigma in the U.S. about public transportation, and just the idea that if you're taking the bus or the subway or some non-car form of getting to work, you're kind of judged by society as lesser. And to me, it's unfair, and it's also disappointing seeing the quality of cleanliness on a lot of these. I try to ride the bus sometimes, and it's just, I definitely feel like I'm debasing myself in a way because it is dirty, and there are people on there who it's unfortunate that there aren't more people who do ride public transportation. I guess is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, you're right. In my area, there's a lot of push. Well, and we're building now all of these different light rail link type things, and they're fine and they're great. But actually, buses are the most wonderfully flexible transportation means, because you can sort of, you can within a very short period of time redeploy them if you've got a shift, if a new neighborhood is built or something. But buses just don't get people excited.
I don't know about that.
Don't you?
Interestingly, living in Tacoma, Washington, we are part of the history of the subversion of rail transit. Mm-hmm. So there's a major lawsuit in the 1940s here because essentially GM came in and bought the local street line, shut it down, and replaced it with buses.
Well, that's true, and the street line was very effective.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking today when we're looking at, making billion-dollar infrastructure or not able to do the type of transportation planning we'd like to do because it takes so much money to build these light rail systems. And we don't very often talk about the fact that maybe we could just add another fleet of buses.
Yeah. And again, I'm not arguing for one or the other, but it's interesting that the assumption is that buses are simply more flexible. And it isn't necessarily the case. It's more a matter of how you plan your transportation hubbing.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I think along the lines of what Trey was talking about, too, about it being perceived that people on buses, that it's sort of a lower form of transportation. I think it's similar for other things that people might choose for sustainability reasons as well, like living in a small home or having just one vehicle per household or having a small vehicle as opposed to a large one. I think a lot of these things are kind of seen as status symbols, but if somebody... like I choose to live in a 900 square foot home, partially to save energy and to save money for other things that I value more. But I think sometimes, it kind of gets a second look like, well, why would you do that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're perceived as sort of being quirky. That this is sort of an unusual choice to make when it's an entirely rational choice, I think.
I prefer to think of it as being what's next rather than quirky.
Oh, do you? Okay.
It's cutting edge.
Cutting edge. Well, I'm going to add one more pet peeve onto the sort of carbon footprint thing, and that is that I really do enjoy traveling, and I travel at least one big trip a year. And I really would like us to get to the point where we have some better options, not necessarily in place of airlines, but I'm looking forward to the day when the airlines have some even greater fuel economy. Maybe they are hydrogen fueled or something, because I'm not willing to give up the travel, but I wish there was a way to do it in a more climate friendly manner.
Well, and that's a lot of people will avoid air travel, and for very good reasons if it's unnecessary. But we also have the benefit of being able to go and see these places and meet new people all over the world. So would we want to stop that in order to be green? I don't think so. But, for instance, if we can put carbon capture in place so that we're pulling atmospheric CO2 out, it is also possible to start thinking about that as a management tool, so that if we want to support a certain level of air travel, we are going to pull so much carbon out of the atmosphere in order to offset it. We don't really have the technology to think about it that way, but it's all out there in pieces today. And so that gives me a lot of hope, even when it does frustrate me on a day-to-day basis.
That's a good point. Well, what about in the category of sustainable lifestyle choices? Tell me about things that you love.
I'm really excited about how many local foods are available. I've lived in Chicago, Madison, Wisconsin, and now in Maine, and there's strong local food movements in all of those areas. There's community-supported agriculture, CSA farms that you can join, and bustling farmers markets with a variety of products, not just produce, but things like dairy products and eggs and meat. And so I'm just delighted at how much the local food movement has really blossomed in the last decade or two.
Yeah, I'd add to that the local food sharing and food waste reduction programs that are starting to come into place are really encouraging too. We're using, waste a ton of food, but we're using more of it than we used to. And local solutions are the big key to that. And if we think about that as a logistics system, I know I'm harping on logistics today, but that's the beginning of how we get this completely distributed, locally sourced economy in place. So all of this is pointing in the right direction. It's just we're fighting the last vestiges of people who want to maintain an 1870s to 1940s kind of lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And piggybacking on that idea, I'm a big fan right now of these meal delivery services, especially as they're starting to get more localized with their kitchens. They're able to deliver you really fresh and healthy meals with a limited amount of packaging. So it reduces your energy use at the house to cook a meal and your need to go out and buy ingredients and deal with all the packaging at the grocery store. I think it's definitely something that's here to stay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think those are really great, especially if you are someone who isn't really into cooking. It can be a great sort of bridge also into, you can use your own ingredients and make dinner, and it really is very good.
So how many people have used DoorDash, Uber Eats, or any of the other delivery services on the show? I'm actually an Uber Eats person now. I never thought I would go for it, but it's remarkably interesting to be able to get food delivered.
Yeah, I have not done that, but I've been very tempted. I have a couple of friends who drive for Uber Eats, and it's spread really rapidly. It really only rolled out about a year ago.
Yeah, well, it's been a little longer in other places, but being able to order from my favorite Vietnamese restaurant and have it delivered, unfortunately, often in really terrible packaging. And that's the thing that what I would like to see Uber Eats do is help a consumer enforce a packaging choice on these restaurants. That would be a great contribution for Uber to make.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I live in Mid-Coast, Maine, and I don't know that we have that program here. I don't even know that we have Uber here. So we're a little bit behind the times, and we don't have the population density that might be required.
Actually, that might be a good thing, too.
Yeah.
We do have it here. I just haven't used it. I'm kind of a social guy. I like to go to restaurants if I'm going to eat instead of have it sent to my house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that tends to, and we tend to do that too. We eat out pretty regularly, but we have pets. We have 2 cats, and now we've added 2 dogs that are kind of puppies. And so eating at home is actually not all that pleasant at the moment. It's like eating in a zoo. So we tend to eat out too. But I have a friend who was noting that she orders dumplings almost every night from a local restaurant, a local Chinese restaurant, and I have to say that was pretty alluring.
Yeah, a good dumpling is not often made at home.
No, it's not. One of the things I really appreciate and like, and I think our website, not to just, honk our own horn, toot our own horn, but there are so many really good articles now about ways that you can incorporate either more green living or more sustainable choices into your home environment. So, we have a couple on our website right now. One is about planting your raised garden. That has a lot of really good tips about getting yourself ready for spring and summertime. And there's also an article that I particularly enjoyed that was all about entertaining. It was 5 ways to throw a green dinner party. And the thing that I liked best about that little article was it said, one of the things that the person does in a party is instead of sort of party favors, they will have a table out that has things that they're ready to get rid of. So it might be in my house, it would probably be like teacups and books. But I've had friends over before and I've had books piled up on a corner to, take into used bookstores. And I've just ended up giving books away to friends. So I love the idea of having a table that's sort of a, take away this table take away this item if you're interested. I think that would be a lot of fun.
And that kind of sharing is what has, like we were talking about, the kind of weirdness of being sustainable was thought to be a uncouth practice at some point in history,
Mm-hmm.
and we're moving past that. It's great to see.
Yeah. So, what are some of your peeves or some of your things you do not love in the sustainable lifestyle category?
One thing that I find disappointing is that it often becomes sort of a socioeconomic issue. Like I think the sustainability movement is engaging certain demographics and not others.
Yeah.
And so, especially on a socioeconomic basis. And so I think it can almost be pretentious, sort of like, oh, look, I have this organic bamboo shirt from wherever, and
I paid $400 for it.
Right. And I think it can kind of become a status symbol in and of itself, or seem inaccessible to people. And that's why I like, like what you were talking about, Evelyn, like, giving away clothes that you've just kind of lost interest in, but they still have life, or books that you've read, that I think there has been quite a cultural shift to embrace secondhand things. And I find that much potentially, I think the sustainability movement is isolating some people and can have a hint of pretentiousness.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is marketed to a sort of an elite audience. The idea of that, you are sort of a well-educated person, or you are in a certain social economic segment, and so you will be interested in these things. But I'll say that on the flip side of that, that's not always. I don't think it's a good thing. But sometimes the benefit of that is that then the things sort of become. They have a certain cachet, and people who otherwise wouldn't be interested in, let's say, if we go back a few years, who might otherwise not be interested in driving a small car like a Prius, suddenly think, ooh, a Prius, that's quite popular and has a certain status, and now I'm suddenly interested. So,
and your Tesla.
And the new Tesla. Oh, Tesla's super, definitely one of those. Yeah. So it's hard to say, but I agree with you. I think, and that's what I was thinking with regard to the Loop thing, which I'm very excited about. But I did sort of feel that it was their market audience is definitely probably a higher income share.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me, my biggest disappointment when it comes to lifestyle is what we just exited, the holiday season and all the decoration and waste that we create as a society. And I mean, you're going to see, like Sarah mentioned, a little more of it for Valentine's Day coming up. It's just, it's difficult that it's part of our cultural design that we increase our waste during these times.
Yeah. We got a Facebook question this morning from a woman who purchased, and I'm not sure she meant this literally, a ton of balloons and has realized that they're not good. Yeah. And so she said, now what do I do with them? And, it's unfortunate she didn't precycle, first and foremost. But, we take on all these extra expenses, too, around these holidays that turn into waste. And we need to rethink that.
Okay, well, Mitch, that's actually a really good segue into our Earthling questions. So let's look at those. The first one comes from Diana in California. And Diana asks, I think this is quite interesting. She says, are you aware of any cannabis vape pen recycling programs in California? It seems some dispensaries collect vape pens to take to the local jurisdiction's e-waste collection program. E-waste and hazardous waste operators don't know what to do with the material. Any information you have on how other local jurisdictions are dealing with this same issue will be helpful.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of information on our site about that. And I'll certainly defer to Trey, who knows the materials better. But it is an e-waste. It's simply an e-waste we're not really fully familiar with how to deal with. And the other problem with it is it's contaminated. The cannabis or the other vape stuff creates a sticky residue on all the material.
Huh. Well, you've provided a link to a website that is www.cannabisdispensarymag.com. Mm-hmm. And it has an article on the vexing issue of vape recycling. Yeah. So that may be one resource. But I'm wondering, it is e-waste, but it's also kind of makes me think a little bit of medical waste, like, insulin pumps and things like that. And where do those go?
So I think the one thing to keep in mind with vape pens, and I believe this is all of them, but I don't vape, so I apologize if I'm mistaken here. You have the cartridge and then you have the battery separate, because people basically just unscrew the cartridge and then replace when they want a different flavor or what have you. The cartridge itself doesn't really have anything problematic in it. There's no electronic component.
Right.
The battery is where you have the electronics. And I really don't think, especially because they're lithium ion batteries, you're going to have a problem recycling those where you would recycle other rechargeable batteries. They're part of Calder Recycle's program.
Well, but the thing is, the other thing that is electronic in it is the vaporizer component, which heats the oil or whatever it is up so that it vaporizes. And so it does have other qualities than a battery. But you're certainly right that part of it certainly isn't a problem. But this is one of these things where society has raced into adopting a technology that we don't fully understand the health consequences of, as well as the recycling consequences. So we should be looking for some regulation, some discussion about how to do this. And certainly now that Atria bought Juul, the big tobacco company bought the big vape company, this seems to be something that's going to be around and creating a lot of waste for many years to come. And just think about what cigarette butts have done to the world.
Yeah, good point.
To answer Evelyn's other question about what to do with other medical waste, I think the primary source that consumers would have of medical waste would be what's called sharps, basically the needles you would use for injections of insulin or what have you. Many communities will accept those as part of their household hazardous waste collection programs. Definitely put them in some sort of coffee can or something so it won't have an accidental needle prick while you are bringing it to the facility, though.
Okay, good point. So I actually think that's actually good information. One is that this is a developing area. Two is that there may be component parts of the vape pen that are more easily disposable, and then kind of keep talking about it and keep looking. This area, the cannabis market is expanding so amazingly quickly that things are changing all the time, and they may well come up with something. I think whoever comes up with the first effective way of dealing with these component parts is probably going to be maybe making some money.
Well, and that'll be a technical solution, and technology people are investing in the cannabis industry. Yeah.
So our second question comes from Jill on Facebook, and Jill asks, hi, how does someone get rid of a box of ammo? The person no longer has a gun, so they have ammo they'd like to get rid of.
Well, so ammunition can be recycled, but it's not easy to recycle because you have to take it somewhere special. For instance, a police station. You could take it to a gun range, perhaps, and give it to them to use for target shooting. But if it's used, then you're really talking, so you're talking about the cartridge, which is brass or steel, and then you've got the lead slug or the steel slug, and they're not easy to put back together. So, it's a difficult thing to get rid of. You're talking about, particularly in the case of lead, a dangerous heavy metal, and you need to be careful about that. So take it to the police station, call your local gun range or maybe a local gun club and ask them if they would like a donation. The other thing you can do if you wanted to break it down is the nitrates that make the gunpowder explode are good fertilizer. So you could also just break your ammo apart, be careful doing that, and drain the gunpowder out.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think I might actually take the go to the police station option.
You don't want to sit all evening and collect gunpowder?
Well, it's probably like crocheting, so maybe. So our third question comes from Kate on Facebook, and Kate says, hi, I was searching for ways to recycle glass after touring our recycling facility and learning that they can't do much with it. I found your article from 2009, and it said the exact opposite. I would suggest updating your article or removing it. Aha. So what do we think about glass recycling?
And my response to Kate was to point out that you toured one recycling facility and that recycling facility has made the decision they can't do much with glass. But glass is very recyclable. That did not change between 2009. What did was the Chinese waste ban. And so many different facilities, MRFs, the materials recovery facilities, municipal transfer stations, are making different decisions about what they'll accept. Trey, I know you've got some thoughts on this. What do you think?
So the big thing to realize with glass is it's not very profitable in the sense that there are definitely recyclers in the United States that will accept it from municipal programs. But because of the weight of the glass compared to plastic or aluminum, it's going to cost them more to transport it there, and the money they receive won't be nearly as much as they would get for aluminum or newspaper, those kind of materials. So a lot of programs actually will accept glass just as a way to get more material from consumers, kind of almost accepting it as a loss, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is not particularly profitable, but, if you could keep it local, to the point we were talking about before, if you ship glass a long way, it isn't really a good idea it doesn't help the environment that much. But locally, if you could recover the glass and reproduce it for local use, that could give, say, for instance, a small brewery a 7 to 10% advantage in the cost of their bottles over some other options. And 7 to 10% for a small business like that can be really substantive. It's a material difference. However, we don't have that infrastructure right now and don't think that way about the circular economy. Once we get there, even something that is not particularly profitable, handled the right way, could be a key to a business growth.
I think the other really good reason to recycle glass is the material used to make it, the silica and the sand. It's not as infinite supply as we think. A lot of beaches are getting depleted. A lot of erosion is happening. And so the more we can just keep making glass out of recycled content instead of using brand new material, the better off we're going to be as a society.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the many controversies swirling around our current administration had to do with them giving a favorable deal to a Saudi company who wants to sell sand in the United States.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I never thought about running out of sand. Amazing. Well, any other things that we love or don't love before we wrap up today? Mitch, anything from you?
This group.
Oh,
let's have a big hug.
A big self-appreciation hug, definitely.
Everyone gets sustainable flowers, local flowers, when you're buying Valentine's Day gift this year.
Ah, good advice.
Do not order the flowers from all over the world. They are the worst for the environment.
Okay. Very good. Very good. I'm hoping for some chocolates, so we'll see.
I hope they're local chocolates.
I hope so too. Okay, that's all for this episode. Best wishes for a happy Valentine's Day to everyone. As always, we appreciate you, and we love to get your suggestions and feedback. You can send email to feedback@earth911.com, and stay tuned to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and at our earth911.com website. We will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.